Cherubs, by now you should have read through chapter 12. It's the start of part 2, which takes place in the cottages. Part 1 was Halsham, part 2 is the cottages. And I'll be real with you, this is the part of the book that hurts the most for me. It starts out with Kathy talking about how she's writing an essay about the Victorian novel. In particular, she's reading a book called Daniel Deronda by George Eliot. She then meditates on how the people, I want to call them people now, they're not really students anymore, and to call them clones just sounds derogatory. So the people at the cottages, she explains, demonstrate how well adjusted they are to post-school life by how much they read. Like, it's a sign that you're coping well if you read a lot. See, this is the part where I feel personally attacked. Because at this point in the novel, you know what role she plays in society. You know that she won't live past her mid-30s, and that she's 16 or 17 at this point, and any thinking person reading this novel has to think, what are you doing reading a Victorian novel? There are definitely better things for you to be doing right now, Kathy. Like, she's done a great job as our narrator, caring for us and shielding us from the reality of her condition, that all her friends are going to start donating their organs in a few years until they die. I mean, we call it donating, she calls it donating, which is definitely a euphemism for what is, in reality, a horrifying medical violence that is forced upon them in their near future. But Kathy protects us. She's never that upset about it, so neither are we. But the Victorian novel, Kathy, you've got only a few years left with these people. You've only a few years left to smash the system that oppresses you so that you could have more time with these people. Katniss Everdeen would be planning to blow up the Capitol at this point, but Kathy is reading George Eliot. The novel that she's reading, by the way, Daniel Deronda, it's about the moral obligation that we have to fight for an oppressed population of people. Nothing is by accident in this book. So yeah, I feel attacked here. Because, for some reason, it is so obvious to me that Kathy should not be reading a book about creating social change, but she should be engaging in change making. And what's the difference? She won't live till she's 35. I won't live till I'm 85. What's the difference? Why do I judge her for reading the Victorian novel, but not myself for reading this book? I read a lot of books. I tell myself that having more knowledge and knowing more things about the way the world works is good. It's a good way to exist. We all tell ourselves that to some degree. Maybe that's the fantasy that I live with. Knowledge is power and all that. But the reality is, and Ishiguro's book shows us this in no uncertain terms, that knowledge without action, with emotion, and without a cause is impotent. You go to school and you read books in order to learn. But that learning should translate to service and action on behalf of those communities that are the victims of systemic violence. If it isn't, if the only reason that you're trying to learn more, the only reason that you have for reading books is to say that you've read more books, well then you're missing the point. And the people at the cottages, they're definitely missing the point. Oof, that feels like a good way to end this one. That was a really powerful statement. I feel good about it. But that was only chapter 10. I've got to talk about the rest of it. So on to some other interesting bits about these chapters. Let's focus on Ruth for a second. She's always interesting. Kathy, always the observer, notices that Ruth has adopted the mannerisms of more experienced veterans. And again, I think that Ishiguro is putting these two dramas together for a reason. He's showing us the uselessness of knowledge without action at the same time that he's showing us how our inaction is learned. Ruth's behavior changes based on the people who have gone before her. She stops showing how much she cares about Tommy openly and instead just taps her hand against her arm or whatever she's doing. She's pulling away from her youth faster than she needs to. She's starting to make up lies about Halsham at the same time that she's distancing herself from her closest friend. She's learned the behaviors of the older and more experienced people, and those behaviors are less emotional, less connected, and ultimately, we'd have to say, less authentic. Obviously, Kathy means more to her than those veterans do, yet she's pulling away from Kathy here. She throws her collection of student artwork in the trash, the symbol that represents the real human connection she had during her youth. It just goes into the garbage. So at the same time that Ishiguro is showing us the sterility of knowledge without action, he's showing us the method by which we learn to care less about people and justify our lack of action. Partly, it's that we mimic our apathy on the generations that came before us. They've learned not to care, and we rush to catch up with them. And then we go to Norfolk. I have lots of thoughts about this trip to Norfolk, but we need to read a couple more pages before they're going to be useful. So let me know what you think of these chapters in the comments below, and thank you for watching.